First of all, PQA is in a great position. Our name is prominently known for our work in medication use. And so the efforts that we've undertaken really are driven by our members. And so we have a highly engaged, committed, diverse membership that comes to the table for all the right reasons. One of the things that I think we're going to focus on at PQA and that we talked about at the leadership table is, there's an opportunity for PQA to really become the preeminent organization to speak on improving medication use quality. And so I think that's one of the things that we'll build upon at PQA over the next couple months and years.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Quality Solutions Quality Corner Show, where we believe that quality measurement leads to better outcomes. Let us become your go-to source for all things related to quality and medication use in healthcare. We will hit on trending health topics as they relate to performance measurements and find common ground for payers and practitioners. We will discuss how the Equip platform can help you with your performance goals, and we will also make sure to keep you up to date on pharmacy quality news. So buckle up and put your thinking cap on. The Quality Corner Show starts now.
Hello, Quality Corner Show listeners. This is your host, Nick Dorich, and we welcome you back to the show. This month, we are discussing the myriad of ways in which pharmacists can improve quality healthcare for patients. We cannot talk about quality without talking about the Pharmacy Quality Alliance, or PQA. In February, we spoke with Laura Cranston, who had led PQA since its inception. Today, we're happy to speak with Micah Cost, who took over as the Chief Executive Officer of PQA in February of this year. Micah, let's just begin and let's welcome you to the Quality Corner Show.
Thanks, Nick. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm excited to spend some time talking with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, Micah, the excitement is mutual. I'm happy to have you here today, and I look forward to hearing about how the new job is going and what you are looking to achieve for the road ahead with PQA. But before we talk about the future, let's touch on your past and your experience as a pharmacist. So what has been your career path that led to this current role for you at PQA?
So a little bit about me. I'm a second-generation pharmacist. My dad is a long-term care pharmacist in Tennessee. And so I grew up in pharmacy, literally and figuratively. I grew up scrubbing phenytoin off of long-term care drug carts. So as a kid, pharmacy was always my passion and the profession I was headed into. Went to pharmacy school at the University of Tennessee. After that, took an executive fellowship at the Tennessee Pharmacist Association, then was fortunate enough to get hired on as the director of professional affairs. And so leading up to my most recent position before PQA, I was the executive director of the Tennessee Pharmacist Association. And so over that 12 and a half years at TPA, I spent a lot of time working directly with the pharmacy community and the health plan community and the payer community on what it looks for the future of value-based care in pharmacy. And so that was very much ingrained in all of my past life efforts. And so I joke that if you see me in a pharmacy, you probably ought to walk right back out because I'm not a clinical person. But I think where the niche is really in advocating for changes for patients that improve their health and also trying to improve the healthcare environment. And that's really how I built my career leading up until this point. And when I came to PQA, there were a couple of things that really drew me to PQA. The relationship that PQA has as a multi-stakeholder organization, a convening third-party neutral entity that can bring everybody together to focus on things that improve patient health, specifically as it relates to medication use quality. That was one of the key driving factors. And then the second was really just the skills and the talent of the PQA team and the opportunity that we had with the team that Laura had built over 15 years. It was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So happy to be in Virginia. I'm coming up on 90 days now. So I'm about a mile wide and an inch deep on PQA, but we're really learning and focusing on future vision. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Micah. I'm one, as someone who's previously lived in Virginia and that Northern Virginia area, I know it's a great place. So hope you grow to love it, enjoy it as much as I did. I know as well that your experience in Tennessee, there were a lot of great things going on there with pharmacy. So it must have been bittersweet, sweet to leave that team, that community. I know there's a lot of folks in Tennessee that still miss you, but they're also really proud to have you on a larger scale with pharmacy. So I really appreciate that. And we'll talk perhaps more about some of those examples from Tennessee and how it helps shape your path along the way. Now, with our introduction covered, we will jump into our content for the show. And I want to provide a quick overview of what comes next. Micah, we have 3 questions written down for us to explore. I'll go down the list, ask the first question. You get a chance to respond. We may have some back and forth, or we may summarize the key points. And we're then going to repeat that process for the second and third questions, which is the primary content for our podcast today. When we get to the end, we'll talk a little bit and get to know you besides just pharmacy topics, what else drives you. And then that's going to be the end of the podcast. So now that we've described the process, let's go ahead. We're going to jump into question 1. Micah, the first question for you is going to be related to PQA, the team, and what PQA does. So PQA serves many roles in the healthcare landscape, or more specifically, medication use landscape. This includes being a research organization, an educator, a convener, but most importantly, in my mind, PQA is a quality measure developer. Now that you've had a bit of time to settle into your role at PQA, how would you describe the primary focus for the organization? Because again, quality measures is a big part of it. But it's going to be a lot more to that context. So would love to hear what you've learned on the job and how you describe PQA to others.
I think, Nick, there's a lot to unpack in what PQA offers. First of all, PQA is in a great position. Our name is prominently known for our work in medication use. And so the efforts that we've undertaken really are driven by our members. And so we have a highly engaged, committed, diverse membership that comes to the table for all the right reasons. One of the things that I think we're going to focus on at PQA and that we talked about at the leadership table is, there's an opportunity for PQA to really become the preeminent organization to speak on improving medication use quality. And so I think that's one of the things that we'll build upon it at PQA over the next couple months and years. We want to build out our visibility a bit within the broader healthcare community and really be a champion on behalf of our members for medication use quality and the value that it delivers for not just for patients, which are probably the ultimate end user and the goal for everyone, but also the payers and our entire healthcare system. And so really being that true consensus building organization that improves quality. Measurement, it's always going to be our hallmark, and it's at the heart of quality improvement. And the statement's been impressed upon me that if you don't measure something, you can't reliably improve it. And, I think PQA has an opportunity to not just be a measure developer, but to really be a measured steward in this space. So basically looking at our conceptualization all the way through retirement and being a steward of that measure all the way through. And so I think there's some important work that needs to be done as far as becoming a true measure steward that our organization's aligned to do. And that really involves supporting and evaluating the accurate and appropriate use across the measure lifespan. As the next generation of measures, as we look at the next generation of medication use, we all have this view of where we want it to end up, especially the ones that are focused on outcomes. I think that depends a lot on the volume, the quality, and the standardization of data. And so I think there's an opportunity for PQA to play a role in data and how we build that data bridge between payers and providers and the larger healthcare community. And then I think if you look at kind of where we're committed to giving patients a voice in this process, including those ones that are affected by healthcare disparities. And so, I know everybody's focused on healthcare equity, and that is something that absolutely PQA is invested in and will continue to invest on in the future to make sure that our measures are informed by patient experience, because that's going to be an important component of this as well.
Thanks, Micah, for that description. And I'm sure you knew a lot of that going into the job already, but being in the belly of the beast, if you will, get you a better experience as that's been developed. From your experience, and you've been involved outside of PQA, you've been involved with pharmacy as a group, and with payers that have been able to understand quality measures. But now being part of the PQA team, how would you recommend folks become involved with PQA? Is there really kind of a best place to start? Not everyone is going to be and PQA being a member-driven organization, those members are typically health plans, they're pharmacy organizations. But how does an individual pharmacist get involved?
Yeah, especially the folks that have a lot of quality focus. We have a lot of different opportunities. It can be anywhere from technical expert panels. We have experience on our measure utilization panels. We have volunteer opportunities across the board in a lot of different areas to really find a place for folks to fit. Our members are the organizations, as you alluded to. We are 250 members strong and growing, and our members certainly are represented across the board. And that diversity in thought process really creates some opportunities for involvement. I would say, just from a pharmacist perspective, just being aware of the changing landscape in healthcare is probably the most important piece of this, is just to be aware of what's happening in the greater healthcare community. This push toward value-based care, we see it in hospitals, we see this in long-term care environments, we see this in physician environments. So it's not just pharmacy that is grappling with what value means in the definition of pharmacy. It's the healthcare system in a broader landscape. And so I would say being involved and just being aware that value is one of those things that everybody's trying to measure. There are limited dollars that can be spent on healthcare. And so we have to use those dollars in a way that helps patients out and shows value. And so trying to meet those demands of patients and deliver value, that's probably one of the biggest components of this, is to try to figure out what exactly value means. And value means something different to everybody you talk to, whether it's a patient or plan or a provider. So, I think just being aware of the fact that there's a move toward value-based care, that's the first thing you can do. And the second thing is really getting ingrained in some of these organizations like PQA and your national pharmacy organizations, who all have a seat at the table, and really having those conversations to make sure that we're all driving toward the same destination.
Now, Micah, when it comes to talking about quality and value in healthcare, I know that there's going to be a lot of that in just a couple of short weeks from the time of us recording this episode. But when the episode goes live for the audience, it'll probably be right around the time that the 2021 PQA annual meeting that's scheduled for, I believe it's May 11th through 13th. So if you're hearing this episode and it's already passed, still go and check out the website and where you can learn about some of the education sessions and speakers. If you hear this episode before that time, go and check out the PQA website so you can learn how to be engaged with that meeting. I was taking a look at the agenda, Micah, and something that really stood out to me is that there's some certain sessions devoted to equity and really social determinants of health as it relates to medication use quality. This is something that, as we get better with data and data stewardship, you were referencing that's going to be impacting quality measures, and the data sets have to be there, and that information needs to be available so we know how pharmacists can impact that aspect of care. I'd like to hear from you. What is PQA doing to support, in addition to this session, what is the organization doing to address social determinants of health and how it applies to quality measures that are developed?
I think this is one of those passions of the board at PQA. This is one of the passions of the staff at PQA. And so we want to run to it and address it. So social determinants of health and health equity are priorities for our organization, not just at the staff level, but at the board level and at the member level. We are working on specific research that deals with medication access and SDOH. And we're really trying to capture a lot of different pieces of the puzzle and put it all together to target those patients' unmet needs and try to evaluate those barriers to try to break them down. I think, if you look at some of the things we're doing around research, we're going to hold a research symposium, which is kind of a companion piece to our PQA virtual annual meeting on May 17th. And it's going to highlight 4 different team projects that are focused on SDOH and medication access. And so whenever you talk about this, healthcare is all aligned on focusing on this. What we really want to do is try to find that sweet spot where we can affect change. The first strategic initiative I mentioned in the plan, the first strategic initiative is to deepen PQA's work in addressing social determinants of health. And there's really 2 parts to that. The first is we're hoping to endorse a standardized SDOH patient survey, and we want to use that as part of the pharmacist provided care process. And then the second is we're developing a resource guide, an SDOH resource guide, and it's going to detail a lot of the SDOH interventions that most likely can improve quality of medication use and where pharmacists kind of are best positioned to provide things like screening, evaluation, and then also ancillary services to try to address those SDOH factors. And that work has really been informed by our 2020 Leadership Summit, whenever we brought together a lot of different individuals to talk about what this looks like. And it focused specifically on SDOH. So, I think one of the other things that we hear a lot about, and one of the things we're working on related to measurement in this area, we do have 3 risk-adjusted measures that were endorsed by NQF last year. And whenever you talk about valid risk adjustment for measures, those measures had valid risk adjustment methodology for socio-demographic status factors. And so I think we have to take that into account as we look at measurement as well. And so realizing that there are factors in SDOH and health equity that do affect quality measurement, I think that's something that we're squarely focused on from a measure perspective as well.
Thanks, Micah. Now, with that around the assessment that you mentioned there in the NQF endorsement, maybe you can help me and the audience understand this a little bit more. Does that mean it's new measures specifically for things like adherence, but a little bit of a change up to take into account social determinants of health, or does it mean there's certain kind of exclusion or different calculations? How exactly does that get translated to how it impacts performance measurement?
Yeah, it would be looking at a lot of different factors that are within a provider's control, outside of a provider's control, but it could also be external factors to the providers themselves. Could be the process, the environment that patients are in. I think we're all trying to figure out what communities patients are in and what lack of resources they have that negatively affect their ability to take medications and to have medication use appropriately identified and addressed. And so, I guess from a CMS perspective, we have talked to CMS about risk adjustment, and they're currently under consideration about how you risk adjust measures. That's obviously a discussion that's happening across the board, is how do we get at this issue of I would say adjustment that needs to be appropriate to kind of the environment that the patients are in. And so, yeah, specific to this, it's really more an adjustment based on certain external factors, and all of that gets informed by our membership. And so, we definitely keep our ear to the ground with the measures that we have and adjust them as they need to be adjusted. So when you create a measure, it's not a one and done measure. There's so much work that happens after the fact. And so for me, I think that learning curve has been kind of steep just to understand how that works. But just know that does go on. And once you create a measure, it's not one and done. There are adjustments and changes to measures as you go along based on the environment and the application.
Thanks, Micah. And you already went to CMS. That was going to be in the back of my head. I was thinking, hey, is CMS going to be involved, or if they had a stance on this? But it sounds like that's already tied into it. So great to hear that part. All right, Micah, we'll go to our third question now. And I'd like to pick your brain a little bit more about what the future looks like as it relates to PQA, measure concepts, et cetera. So, there are measures for adherence for different classes of therapy. There's measures related to opioids. There's measures related to gaps in care based on clinical guidelines. Are there areas that you see, or maybe PQA already has this in the pipeline? Are there other disease states that could be coming in the future that folks may not be privy to at this point? Additionally, I would like to point out PQA has been talking a bit more in the last year or so around the concept of pharmacy level measures. That may be something you have a little bit of insight into that you can talk about on this platform, and how that can be used in value-based arrangements. But would like to have you, if you don't mind, giving us a little bit of a peek behind the Wizard of Oz curtain into what's going to be happening in the future for PQA.
Yeah, Nick, this is one of the more exciting things I think that I get to talk about, is kind of where our future is and where our measure efforts are going to focus in the future, and where they're focused right now. I think it's always important to look at the vision and look down the pipe to see what's coming. And so, I think most folks are probably familiar with medication adherence, our work around opioids. Those are core evaluations, core sets, as you alluded to, and those are being implemented across the board, whether it be Part D, it could be in Medicaid, and then it could be also in the commercial and private plans. So there's opportunities in a lot of different arenas. Whenever you look at the pieces of work that people are probably not as familiar with, it's our work around measurement gaps, and we're constantly soliciting ideas around measurement gaps and things that we can address which promote value. And in my mind, the market needs to be there, and so you have to really mirror what's possible to be connected, but also to have a little bit of ideation into an insight of what maybe health plans are looking for or the gaps they need addressed. And so it's a very important discussion. But whenever we look at these environments, we pull it all in from a perspective of our diverse membership. So you pull it in from a health plan's perspective, the pharmacist perspective, the healthcare provider's perspective, what vendors are out there, and pulling in all of that information to really inform measure development. One of the neat projects that I've learned about during my first couple of months here is our work with the Community Pharmacy Foundation. So we launched an effort last fall. It's a year-long initiative to kind of identify and prioritize measure concepts that demonstrate the value of community pharmacy practice. And it's really yielded, I think, a great list of starting points for disease states and areas where we need to address. And so if you talk about the specific items that are being prioritized, I think we're looking at the feasibility for a couple of things. Blood pressure at goal and improvement. Blood pressure, you might say that we focused on blood pressure for a long time, but engaging pharmacists in blood pressure control and management specifically during a pandemic has been critical. And so that's a key component. You also look at things like HbA1c or hemoglobin A1c control and improvement. That's another key component where pharmacists can play a role in closing gaps. Of course, avoidance of asthma and COPD exacerbation, chronic lung disease is always a large driver of readmissions, large driver of increased costs. Immunization administration, I don't have to really go into too much detail, but we know over the past couple of months, immunizations has always been a huge component, but we've seen pharmacy, specifically community pharmacy, play a bigger role in immunizations. Medication therapy problem resolution, whenever you're looking at that specific measure, it would also be inclusive of medication reconciliation. So that I think is really important as you talk about a broader healthcare community, maybe not just even in the community pharmacy realm, but medication reconciliation in the health systems as well. And then, of course, SDOH. SDOH, we're looking at a specific measure on referral and screening that we can put into place there. So, I think whenever you look at those are really our prioritized community pharmacy visionary measures. And that really goes toward pharmacy level measurement and demonstrating that value between a community pharmacy and then a health plan and what that looks like. So I think those are pie in the sky a bit, but we definitely are bringing folks together, having those conversations. And right now we're in the middle of testing feasibility for those concepts. So we hope to have some measures to roll out to really help out with the closing of the gaps in that area.
Micah, before we close out on our primary questions, one other follow-up to this and measures that are coming ahead. One of the other areas around medication use that is frequently talked about, high cost, maybe limited as far as the networks. You can see where I'm going already. Specialty pharmacy, perhaps for oncology treatment, other things, like that, or rheumatoid, biologics, et cetera. Is that a topic that comes up as well? I would assume, especially from the payer community, high cost from a patient perspective, that appropriate treatment is a big thing. But for pharmacies, there are more and more pharmacies that are specializing in specialty pharmacy. So is that something that's in the pipeline as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a couple of specialty pharmacy measures that deal with specific disease state areas. And so we have a specialty pharmacy set. The other thing that we're really working on right now is specialty pharmacy turnaround time. That's one of the, probably I would say one of the measures that is moving a bit further down the pipeline, specific to specialty pharmacy. And so I would say absolutely that's something we're focused on. I think there's not a conversation that goes by that specialty pharmacy doesn't come up. And it's the cost, but it's also the wraparound services and the importance of the supportive services that go along with the medications and what does that look like. And so I think it's a much more holistic patient viewpoint. And so, in terms of specialty pharmacy, yeah, we're deadlocked on that.
Great. Glad to hear that one. I know as I speak with a lot of pharmacists, having the opportunity to chat with you, I'm sure that they'd be excited that I got to ask you about that so that they know that's coming up and there's going to be more appropriate measures, right, that are coming into that space. Now, Micah, I said that was going to be it for our primary content. Again, you're going to be getting prepped for the PQA annual meeting, which again is going to be coming up May 11th through 13th here, May 11th through 13th, 2021. So, Micah, we'll go ahead and move to the closing. for today's podcast. I do want to thank you again for your insight about medication use and quality measurement. You've certainly shown here that you've been learning quite a bit on the job just 90 days into the new gig, and it's great to hear. I know from my own standpoint, PQA has a number of different ways to be engaged with different task force education opportunities, a lot of great webinar content that's done on a regular basis. So would highly recommend everyone check that out at the PQA website. But we do want to wrap up, and Micah, we do have a final question for you. We're not going to talk about medication use for this last question. Your Twitter bio states or includes the mention that you are a quote unquote guitar picker. My understanding is that is one of, if not your favorite hobby, and it may be a way that you relax, either going into a big meeting like PQA Annual, or it may be a way you de-stress after the meeting. But what are you it sounds like you're quite the talented guitar player. Do you mind sharing how you got into that and why it brings so much enjoyment to you?
Yeah, so I think it's an obligatory requirement for anybody from Nashville to at least know how to play a guitar, right? So as I describe myself a guitar picker, I didn't say that I was a talented guitar picker. So no, I've been playing for quite a while, and it's really one of those stress relievers. It's one of those fun things that I like to do. It is the quintessential quality improvement opportunity, because every time you play, you can get better at it, and you're never going to be truly great at it. So there's always new things to learn and to improve on. And so, yeah, I absolutely enjoy playing guitar. I think I'm proficient at it. My singing voice, completely different. I do not sing except in front of my dogs, and even then they move to another room. So the singing voice is really not there, but the guitar playing talent, it's proficient. I would say that.
Great, glad to hear that, Micah, and I guess apologies to your dogs then as well. All right. Well, Mike, I really appreciate you joining the podcast for today. Before we close, if anyone does want to contact you or hear about how they can get involved with PQA, where can they contact you? What's the best way to do so?
Yeah, I would say go to our website or reach out to any of our team here at PQA. We are very much informed by our members. We're very much informed by the pharmacy community, and we do always appreciate opportunities where people share best practices. We're always looking for speakers for programs. We're also looking for, great innovative ideas that we can share out and kind of bring to the table to try to figure out if there's a measure opportunity, but also if there's an opportunity just to amplify that and make it a best practice within the broader healthcare community. So I would say find us on the website. We have LinkedIn, Twitter. Find us on the socials if you want to and engage with this, because that's absolutely how we operate. And we love hearing from folks that are doing amazing things. So please do reach out to us, and we'd love to engage with you. That's our bread and butter and what we're good at and what we appreciate most.
Well, we know there's many pharmacists doing many amazing things, and so there certainly is no shortage of pharmacists that could have an opportunity to engage with PQA. Ultimately, what's that going to lead to? Better data, better outcomes. That leads to better care for patients, and that's what pharmacists are all about. So great points, Micah. Now, with that, we have officially finished our content for today's episode. And Micah, again, thank you for your commitment to patient care and to pharmacy practice. Thank you to the Pharmacy Quality Alliance, or PQA, as well, with their support and support and engagement with PQS and with Equip. We love to hear that. And Micah, I do want to give you a special note about this as well. And for our listeners, you mentioned social determinants of health. We'll be diving into that topic in upcoming weeks with some guest speakers. I'm really excited to do that. That was some of our most listened to episodes from our first season of the Quality Corner Show. We're touching on that topic. So, hey, it was successful before. We're going to come back at it again with a deeper dive into that topic. So be sure to check that out. Now, speaking about where you can hear the PQS Quality Corner Show, make sure you do subscribe to our podcast. Make sure you check us out on our social media. You can find us on Twitter at Pharmacy Quality. You can DM us on Twitter if you've got topics that you would like to hear us discuss on the show, or if you'd like to come on the show and talk about these topics. Also, you can contact us at info@pharmacyquality.com. With that, I appreciate you listening to the Quality Corner Show, and there's one final message from the PQS team.
The Pharmacy Quality Solutions Quality Corner Show has a request for you. Our goal is to spread the word about how quality measurement can help improve health outcomes, and we need your help in sharing this podcast to friends and colleagues in the healthcare industry. We also want you to provide feedback, ask us questions, and suggest health topics you'd like to see covered. If you are a health expert and you want to contribute to the show or even talk on the show, please contact us. You can email info@pharmacyquality.com. Let us know what is on your mind, what we can address, so that you are fully informed. We want you to be able to provide the best care for your patients and members, and we wish all of you listeners out there well.